Hello, friends, and welcome back to another round of stories about entitled people. Our story today comes from a bus driver who dealt with one of the rudest passengers imaginable. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with a turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. All right, let's get into it. When you yell at the bus driver, karma takes the wheel. I'm a bus driver. Passengers have to press a stop button if they want the bus to stop at the next stop. Pressing the stop button flicks on a huge banner on the front of the bus, along with making a loud buzz. There are multiple stop buttons on the bus. The condition of buses are quite bad here. Some of the bus buttons are faulty. It's usually not a big deal, as passengers can see if the banner's flicked on, and if it's not, the passenger can just press another button or verbally tell me to stop. However, it just doesn't register with some passengers that there is a huge, visible, and audible banner. Unfortunately, these same passengers tend to lose their minds easily. It was 9:30 p.m. and I was driving between two large suburbs. Let's call them Sunnydale and Riverdale. A passenger must have pressed the stop button, but it didn't register on the banner. As I drove past the stop, he yelled, "Hey, you effing C-word, you missed my stop, you D-head!" I apologized and tried to explain to him that the button must have been faulty and that I would drop him at the next stop. I told him that I could not drop him off on the side of the road because I would get in trouble from the bus company, as they have GPS tracking whenever I open the bus door. The passenger just yelled, "Stop talking crap and open the door, you black C-word!" I stopped at the next stop, about 500 meters ahead, but the passenger yelled, "Just go to Riverdale, mate. I ain't walking." Now, what the passenger didn't know was that since Sunnyvale was a bigger town, the last bus from Sunnyvale to Riverdale was later than the last bus from Riverdale to Sunnyvale. He'd be stranded at Riverdale, 4 kilometers away from his stop. So I kept driving to Riverdale as the passenger requested. I dropped him and the other passengers off and closed the door. I could see him checking the posted timetable on the bus stop. I put my bus into gear and pulled out. I heard him exclaim, "Hey, wait!" as I did so. Unfortunately, I could not have dropped him back to his stop even if I wanted to. I have a strict schedule and change route numbers after each trip. My schedule now was to fill up the bus with diesel and head back to the depot. I filled up my bus and headed back to the bus depot. As I drove back, I saw him walking on the side of the road from 500 meters to 4,000 meters. Honestly, props to you for staying calm. I don't think I could have kept my composure with someone screaming that garbage at me. You handled it exactly how you should, professionally, safely, and by the book. He wanted to make you look like the bad guy, and instead he ended up being the one trudging 4 kilometers down the road under the streetlights. It's just depressing how some people treat service workers like they forget you're a person with feelings doing a difficult, thankless job. And our second story. Prepaid envelopes can be very expensive. This happened over 30 years ago, back when I was 16, sometime in the mid-1980s. Back then, before streaming or even CDs were mainstream, there were these mail-order record clubs that advertised in newspapers and magazines. You could sign up and get a few albums free as part of the deal, then they'd automatically send you 3 new records every month. You had to pay for those by money order within 30 days or get charged interest. At first, it sounded like a dream. I loved music, and the idea of getting records delivered to my door felt amazing. For the first few months, it worked out great. They sent decent albums, the prices weren't bad, and I even kept the free ones. Each shipment came with a prepaid plastic envelope so you could return any records you didn't want, postage already covered by the company. For the first few months, I didn't need to send anything back, so I ended up with a small stash of those prepaid envelopes. I didn't think much of it at the time. After a while, though, the quality of the selections went downhill fast. It went from rock and blues to obscure orchestral stuff I'd never heard of, or generic pop albums I'd never listened to. I decided it was time to cancel the subscription before I drowned in unwanted vinyl. That's when the real trouble started. I contacted the company expecting it to be a simple process, send a letter, close the account, done. But instead, they told me something completely ridiculous, that I was bound by a 36-month rolling contract renewed with every agreed purchase. In other words, every time I paid for a shipment, it reset the clock. According to them, I was stuck for another 3 years. I explained that I was moving away to attend college soon and wouldn't be able to keep up with sending returns from my parents' house. They didn't care. They told me I could just keep returning the records I didn't want each month, and once I stopped buying, they'd start the countdown to end my contract. Basically, they had me trapped, and they knew it. That's when I decided if they wanted me to send things back every month, I'd send them something all right. My dad did construction work on the side, and we had a pile of hardcore rubble and bags of cement behind the house. I took one of those leftover prepaid plastic envelopes, filled it halfway with chunks of concrete, and then poured in wet cement until it was almost full. Once it set, it was heavy, almost too heavy for me to carry to the post office, but I managed. I could just imagine the look on some poor mail clerk's face when that package landed on their desk. Since the envelopes were prepaid, the company had to pay the postage by weight. It must have cost them a small fortune to ship that brick of revenge. 2 weeks later, I called their customer service line to check on my account. I casually mentioned that I still had several prepaid envelopes left and that I'd be sending more returns soon. There was a long pause on the other end of the line before the representative cleared their throat and said, "Sir, your account's been closed. You won't be receiving any more shipments." And that was that. Lesson learned, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. But sometimes a little creativity and a bag of cement can even the playing field. Oh, I love this. Seriously, screw those companies that preyed on kids with free albums and microscopic fine print. That was the scam of the 80s. Lure you in with something cool, then trap you with contracts that sounded like they were written by the devil's lawyer. You tried to do the right thing. You called, explained you were moving, and they still thought they could bully a teenager into paying for junk you didn't want. What kind of scummy business model is that? Corporate greed met teenage spite that day and lost. Good for you. You didn't yell, you didn't give in, you just made sure they learned that squeezing people for profit can get very heavy. Literally. And our next story. Cops called at meeting, 84-year-old HOA queen refuses to step down. Our HOA president is 84 years old and on the biggest power trip I've ever seen. Her name's Marjorie, and she treats the neighborhood like her personal kingdom. She sends violation letters over anything she doesn't like, a slightly faded welcome mat, a trash bin left out for more than 20 minutes, even a kid's bicycle leaning against a garage. Every few months, she updates the bylaws to benefit herself and her little group of loyal neighbors. It's gotten so bad that most of us joke about calling her the HOA queen, except no one's really joking anymore. The worst part is how she keeps control. Our HOA allows proxy votes. If a homeowner can't attend a meeting and doesn't assign their proxy to someone specific, the board, meaning Marjorie and her friends, gets to use that vote however they want. And because most people are either too busy or too fed up to attend, she effectively turned every meeting into a coronation. Every single person on the board lives on her street and kisses the ring, so to speak. We used to have a decent property management company. They didn't have decision-making power, but they handled communication and payments. A year ago, they abruptly quit. I called to ask why, and the rep just sighed and said, "We don't work with dictators." The new property management company isn't faring much better. When I spoke to our current rep, she admitted point blank that they plan to cut ties too if Marjorie doesn't step down. "We can't keep staff willing to deal with her," she said. "She's abusive on every call." Our annual meeting yesterday was pure chaos. It was held in the community center's rec room, and you could feel the tension the moment you walked in. The air was thick with resentment. When a homeowner named Chris stood up to ask why the HOA fees had gone up 15% this year, Marjorie waved her hand and said, "That's not on the agenda." Chris shot back, "It's my money, Marjorie. I'll make it my agenda." That was the spark. Within minutes, voices were raised. Another neighbor shouted about being fined $50 for leaving his Halloween decorations up for 2 extra days. Someone else yelled that Marjorie had her son hired to mow the common area for $300 a week, even though he only mows once every 2 weeks and skips the edges. Marjorie slammed her gavel and shouted, "Order! You people are out of control!" A woman near me muttered, "Pot, meat, kettle." At that point, one of Marjorie's board buddies threatened to call the police, which hilariously has already happened before. Last year's meeting ended with 2 squad cars pulling up because someone threw a stack of bylaws at her. That's how ridiculous it's gotten. This time, cooler heads prevailed before the cops showed, but the yelling didn't stop until someone shouted, "We can remove her!" Silence. Then everyone started talking at once again, but this time with purpose. It turns out we can remove her if 2/3 of all homeowners vote for it. Not 2/3 of whoever shows up, but every single property owner. It's a big hurdle, but after that meeting, people were fired up. We stayed behind afterward, a small group of us, talking strategy. One guy pulled out a notebook and said, "Let's make it official. We'll go door to door, collect signatures. Enough of this." Marjorie saw us huddled and shouted from across the room, "You can't organize against the board. That's harassment." I smiled and said, "Then you might want to call the police again because we're just getting started." Her face went redder than a stop sign. Neighbors I barely know are volunteering to help. The same property manager who threatened to quit sent me a quiet message saying, "If you get the votes, we'll handle the paperwork immediately." Marjorie's been in power for a decade. She's fined people for flowers she didn't like, banned kids' chalk drawings on sidewalks, and once tried to charge someone for having unapproved curtains. We collected the signatures we needed. The following week, we submitted the removal petition, and she finally had to hand over her precious gavel. Marjorie sounds like the final boss of HOAs. The fact that the property management company, a neutral third party, was secretly rooting for you speaks volumes about Marjorie's impossible behavior. And our last story. My neighbor faced jail time because she couldn't read a "no trespassing" sign. The front of my driveway has a big, clear sign that reads "Private Property, No Trespassing" in bold red letters. You can't miss it. It's right at eye level as you pull up. I also have a tall fence around my pool, both for safety and to keep out unwanted guests, whether they're stray animals or overly curious neighbors. The only way in is with a key that unlocks the gate. On top of that, I've got security cameras positioned around the property, one of which points directly at the pool area. Last summer, that setup ended up paying for itself. I was out of town for a few days, enjoying a rare weekend away. One afternoon, my phone pinged with a motion alert from my security system. I opened the app to check the live feed, expecting maybe a raccoon or stray cat nosing around. Instead, what I saw made my jaw drop. 3 teenagers and 1 adult trying to climb my pool fence. The pool was completely covered by a tarp, the heavy-duty kind that can only be retracted using a switch inside my house. You'd think that would be enough to deter anyone, but nope, these 4 geniuses were clearly determined. The adult, a woman, was egging the kids on as they tried to scale the fence. I didn't waste time. I called the police right away, explained that I had live footage of trespassers on my property, and that I was out of town. The dispatcher said officers were on their way, so I sat there watching through the live camera feed as they continued trying to break in. They didn't even run when the squad car pulled up, just stood there looking stunned as the officers got out. Within minutes, all 4 were being escorted off my property in handcuffs. I figured that was the end of it. Trespassing caught on camera, clear signage, open and shut. But apparently logic doesn't apply to everyone. The very next day after I got home, my neighbor, a woman I'd never been close with, came storming over the moment she saw my car pull into the driveway. She was red in the face, yelling before I could even step out. "My sister and her kids are going to have a criminal record now because of you," she screamed. It clicked instantly. "So that's who my cameras picked up," I said calmly. "You should know there's a sign in front of my house that says 'Private Property, No Trespassing.'" She wasn't having it. "You didn't have to call the police. You could have just let them swim. It was hot." "Or," I replied, "they could have respected the sign, stayed off my property, and not broken the law." She pointed at me furious. "You'll see me in court when their case comes up." And sure enough, a few weeks later, I did. In court, her sister, the adult who'd climbed the fence with the kids, gave a truly ridiculous defense. She told the judge that it had been a hot day and she just wanted to cool the kids off. According to her, my neighbor had told her that it was fine to use my pool whenever she wanted because we were good friends. For the record, my neighbor and I are not friends. We've exchanged maybe 10 words in 3 years, most of them about trash pickup schedules. When it was my turn to speak, I explained that I never gave anyone permission to use my pool, especially not while I was away. I showed the footage from my security camera along with a photo of the private property sign clearly visible in the driveway. That was all the judge needed to see. The verdict was swift. Both the neighbor and her sister were found guilty of second-degree trespassing. In my state, that comes with a $200 fine and up to 20 days in jail. The judge also found the 3 teens guilty, though they received lighter penalties as juveniles. My lawyer went a step further and requested a restraining order against both women, which was granted on the spot. The teens' attorney tried one last weak defense, claiming the kids didn't see the sign and didn't know any better. The judge didn't buy it. He pointed out that the kids knowingly followed their mother and aunt's lead, despite the warning signs being clearly posted and impossible to miss. This is one of those stories that makes you wonder if people's brains just take summer vacations too. There's a giant sign saying private property, no trespassing, and somehow this woman's first thought is perfect, free pool day for the kids. Like, what's the logic there? If she saw a locked car with the windows down, would she decide she had the right to borrow it because it's hot out? People like that never say, sorry, I messed up. No, they go straight to, you ruined my life because I broke your rules. She probably left the court muttering about how the judge overreacted. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.